I never thought the day would come when I'd be standing in a hospital ICU, holding my daughter-in-law's cold hand, saying goodbye while machines beeped and nurses moved quietly around us. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. As I leaned in to kiss her forehead, I heard two nurses whispering just outside the curtain. One of them said, "Does he know what they found in her bag?" The other replied, "No, and he can't. Not yet, it would destroy him." My heart stopped. What could they possibly be hiding from me in this moment of grief and loss? If you've ever felt the pain of losing someone you love, or if you know the agony of secrets kept in the shadows, please subscribe, like, and share your story in the comments. Your support means more than you know, and you might help someone else who's living through the same heartbreak. The shock of those words hit me harder than the sight of the ventilator or the smell of antiseptic. I stepped out of the room, my mind racing. What could be so terrible that the nurses would whisper about it, that they'd say it would destroy me? I tried to catch their eyes, but they avoided me, busying themselves with charts and medication trays. My son, pale and exhausted, sat slumped in a chair, staring at the floor. I wanted to ask him if he knew, but something in his posture told me he was just as lost as I was. I walked down the hallway, every step echoing with dread. I passed the nurses' station, where the two women were now speaking in hushed tones to a doctor. I caught fragments. Evidence. Family can't know. Not yet. My hands shook as I gripped the railing, trying to steady myself. I thought about my daughter-in-law, how she'd come into our lives like a whirlwind, full of laughter and light. How she'd made my son smile again after years of loneliness. What could she possibly have been hiding? I returned to the CU, my mind spinning with questions. The machines continued their relentless beeping, a cruel reminder that time was running out. My son looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "Dad, do you think she knew how much we loved her?" I nodded, unable to speak. But inside I was screaming. What were they hiding from us? What secret could be so devastating that even in death, it had to be kept from the family? As the hours passed, the hospital filled with relatives, my daughter-in-law's parents, her sister, friends from church. Each one brought flowers, prayers, and questions I couldn't answer. The nurses avoided my gaze, and the doctor offered only vague reassurances. "We're doing everything we can," he said. But I could see the worry in his eyes. Something was terribly wrong, and I was determined to find out what it was. The hours dragged on, each minute heavier than the last. I watched the nurses move in and out of the ICU, their faces tight with worry, their voices always just a little too quiet when I passed by. My son barely spoke, lost in his own storm of grief. I tried to comfort him, but my mind kept circling back to those whispered words. Evidence, family can't know. Not yet. What could possibly be so terrible? Late that night, as the hospital quieted and the visitors thinned out, I saw one of the nurses slip into a supply closet. Driven by a mix of fear and desperation, I followed. I pressed my ear to the door and heard her on the phone. "Yes, it's still in the locker. No, the family doesn't know. The police will be here in the morning." My blood ran cold. The police? What had my daughter-in-law gotten herself into? I returned to the waiting room, my mind racing. I tried to piece together every detail from the past few weeks. Her sudden mood swings, the late-night phone calls, the way she'd started locking her purse in the car. Had I missed the signs? Was she in trouble? Or was she protecting us from something even worse? At dawn, 2 police officers arrived at the ICU. They spoke quietly with the head nurse, then with the doctor. My son and I watched from across the hall, hearts pounding. Finally, one of the officers approached us. "Are you Mr. Thompson?" he asked. I nodded, barely able to breathe. "We need to ask you a few questions about your daughter-in-law," he said. "It's important that you're honest with us. Did you know she was under investigation?" The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Investigation? For what? I managed to choke out. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "We can't share all the details yet, but we found something in her belongings that suggests she may have been involved in a serious crime. We need to know if you've noticed anything unusual, any changes in her behavior, any new people in her life." My son stared at the officer, his face pale with shock. "No," he whispered. She was just my wife. She worked, she volunteered. She took care of our family. What could she possibly have done?" The officer's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. "Sometimes people hide things from the ones they love most. If you remember anything at all, please let us know." He handed me his card and walked away, leaving us in a silence so heavy it felt like drowning. I looked at my son, searching for answers in his eyes. But all I saw was fear, confusion, and a grief that was only just beginning. Whatever secret my daughter-in-law had taken to her grave, it was about to change everything we thought we knew. The next morning, the hospital was buzzing with rumors. I overheard staff whispering in corners, glancing at our family with a mix of pity and curiosity. My son barely slept, pacing the waiting room, his hands shaking as he scrolled through old texts from his wife, searching for any clue. I tried to keep myself together, but the fear of the unknown gnawed at me. What could she have possibly done? What was in that bag? Just before noon, the police returned. This time, they carried a small evidence bag and a folder of documents. The lead officer called us into a private room. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear his words. "We need to be honest with you," he said. "Your daughter-in-law was found with a large sum of cash, several fake IDs, and a prescription pad reported stolen from a local clinic. We believe she may have been involved in a prescription drug ring." The words hit me like a physical blow. My son's face went white. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible. She hated drugs. She helped people." The officer nodded sympathetically. "We understand this is a shock, but the evidence is clear. We're still investigating, but we need to know if you've seen anything. Unusual packages, strange visitors, anything out of the ordinary." I tried to remember every detail of the past few months, the late-night phone calls, the sudden trips to the pharmacy, the way she'd started locking her purse in the trunk. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so blinded by love for my family that I ignored the truth? My son broke down, sobbing into his hands. "She was all I had left," he choked out. "Why would she do this?" I put my arm around him, but I had no answers, only more questions. The police left us with their card and a warning. "If you remember anything, call us. This investigation isn't over." As we walked back to the ICU, I felt the weight of the secret pressing down on me. My daughter-in-law was gone, but the truth she'd hidden was just beginning to unravel. That night, I sat by her bedside, staring at the woman I thought I knew. I whispered a final goodbye, not just to her, but to the life we'd all shared. I realized that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who can hurt us in ways we never imagined. The days after the police visit felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt in fear, expecting more bad news. My son barely left the house, haunted by grief and confusion. The hospital called to say they'd released my daughter-in-law's belongings, but I couldn't bring myself to pick them up. What if there was more hidden inside? What if the truth was even worse than what the police had told us? But the world didn't stop. Friends and family called, offering condolences, but their voices were laced with questions they were too polite to ask. My daughter-in-law's parents arrived from out of state, their faces drawn and pale. They wanted answers, but I had none to give. We sat together in the living room, the silence between us heavier than any words. Then one afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was a woman I'd never seen before, holding a small child by the hand. She introduced herself as Maria, a nurse from the hospital. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, glancing at my son. Privately. I led her into the kitchen, my nerves on edge. Maria's voice trembled as she spoke. "I was there the night your daughter-in-law was admitted. I overheard something between her and another nurse. She said, 'Tell them I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just trying to help someone I loved.'" Maria paused, her eyes filling with tears. "I think she was protecting someone, maybe even your son." The words sent a chill down my spine. Could it be true? Had my daughter-in-law taken the fall for someone else? Was my own son involved in something darker than I could imagine? I thanked Maria, my mind spinning with new fears. That night, I confronted my son. "Is there something you're not telling me?" I asked gently. He looked at me, eyes hollow. "Dad, I swear I didn't know. She kept secrets from me too, but I think she was scared. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should look in her journal." We searched the house until we found it, a battered notebook hidden in the back of her closet. Inside were pages of confessions, apologies, and a list of names. Some I recognized, others I didn't. At the end, she'd written, "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. I tried to fix things, but I was in too deep. Please forgive me." I sat with my son, reading her words by the dim light of the kitchen. The truth was messier than I'd ever imagined. My daughter-in-law had been living a double life, caught between love and desperation. Secrets and survival, the pain of her loss was now tangled with the pain of betrayal. But as I closed the journal, I realized that even in her darkest moments, she'd tried to protect us. Maybe that was her final act of love. The days that followed were a blur of police interviews, family meetings, and sleepless nights. My son and I handed over the journal to the detectives, who promised to look into every name and every detail. The investigation took on a new urgency, and soon the story broke in the local news. ICU tragedy uncovers secret drug ring. Our family's pain became public, and the whispers in the grocery store and at church grew louder. Daughter-in-law's funeral was a strange mix of grief and suspicion. Some mourners came to pay their respects, others to satisfy their curiosity. I watched my son stand at the front of the chapel, his hands shaking as he tried to speak. "She was the bravest person I ever knew," he said, voice cracking. "She made mistakes, but she loved fiercely. I hope people remember that." After the service, a man approached me in the parking lot. He introduced himself as Detective Harris, one of the lead investigators. "We've made some arrests," he said quietly. Your daughter-in-law's journal helped us connect the dots. She wasn't the mastermind, she was a pawn. She got involved trying to help a friend who was in trouble, and when things spiraled, she tried to shield your family from the fallout. The relief was mixed with heartbreak. My daughter-in-law had sacrificed everything to protect us, even her own reputation. I felt a surge of guilt for every moment I doubted her, for every harsh word I'd spoken in anger or fear. But the shocks weren't over. A week later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a note from one of the people named in the journal. She saved my life, it read. I was lost, and she gave me hope. I'm sorry for the pain I caused your family. I will never forget her kindness. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. I realized that the truth was more complicated than I'd ever imagined. My daughter-in-law had been flawed, yes, but she'd also been brave, loyal, and selfless in ways I'd never understood. As the investigation wound down, the police cleared my son of any wrongdoing. The community's judgment faded, replaced by a quiet respect for the woman who had risked everything for the people she loved. My son and I began to heal slowly, learning to forgive not just but ourselves. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, my son turned to me and said, "Dad, I wish I'd known her better. I wish I'd listened more." I put my arm around him, feeling the weight of our shared loss. "We did the best we could," I said, and so did she. The weeks after the funeral were quieter, but the silence was heavy. My son and I tried to return to our routines, but nothing felt normal. The house was filled with reminders of my daughter-in-law, her favorite mug on the shelf, her handwriting on sticky notes, the scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway. Every small thing was a memory, and every memory was a reminder of how much we'd lost. But slowly, life began to move forward. The police investigation wrapped up, and the community's whispers faded into the background. People who had once looked at us with suspicion now offered quiet support. Neighbors brought casseroles, friends called to check in, and even strangers sent cards with words of comfort. I realized that, despite the pain and the scandal, there was still kindness in the world. One afternoon, I found my son sitting on the back porch, staring at the garden. He looked older, more tired, but there was a new strength in his eyes. "Dad," he said, "I want to do something good, for her, for us. I want to volunteer at the rehab center downtown. Maybe I can help someone the way she tried to help her friend." I felt a surge of pride. "That's a wonderful idea," I told him. "She'd be proud of you." We started volunteering together, spending our weekends at the center. We met people from all walks of life, some struggling, some healing, all searching for hope. The work was hard, but it was also healing. I saw my son come back to life, his grief slowly transforming into compassion and purpose. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt betrayed, lost, or overwhelmed by secrets, know this: healing is possible. The truth may hurt, but it can also set you free. You are stronger than you think, and you are never alone. Summer brought a new warmth to our lives, both in the garden and in our hearts. The scholarship fund in my daughter-in-law's name began to grow thanks to donations from friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard our story. Each letter of thanks from a young nursing student felt like a small piece of healing, a reminder that even the deepest pain could be transformed into hope for someone else. My son and I continued our work at the rehab center, now joined by a few of the people whose lives had been touched by my daughter-in-law. One young woman, Sarah, became a close friend. She told us, "Your family's honesty saved me. I realized I wasn't alone, and that gave me the courage to get help." Her words echoed in my mind for days, a testament to the ripple effect of compassion and truth. We started new traditions, Sunday dinners with friends from the center, movie nights in the backyard, and long walks through the blooming city parks. The house, once filled with silence and sorrow, was now alive with laughter and conversation. My son began dating again, and I saw a lightness in him that I hadn't seen since before the tragedy. He told me, "I'll never forget her, but I know she'd want me to be happy." One afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, my son handed me a letter. It was from my daughter-in-law's mother. She wrote, "Thank you for loving my daughter, even when it was hard. Thank you for telling her story with honesty and grace. I hope you find peace, and I hope our families can stay connected." I felt tears in my eyes as I read her words, grateful for the bridge that had been built between our families. As the months passed, I found myself reflecting on everything we had been through. The secrets, the pain, the loss, but also the forgiveness, the growth, and the new beginnings. I realized that life is never as simple as we wish it could be. People are complicated, love is messy, and healing takes time. But with every act of kindness, every honest conversation, and every step forward, we honor those we've lost and the lessons they leave behind. As autumn arrived, the air grew crisp and the leaves turned gold. I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. The pain of losing my daughter-in-law would never fully disappear, but it had softened, woven into the tapestry of our lives, alongside the joy, the laughter, and the lessons learned. My son and I had become closer than ever, our bond forged in the fires of grief and tempered by forgiveness. The scholarship fund continued to grow, and each new recipient felt like a small victory, a way to keep her spirit alive and to honor the compassion she had shown, even in her darkest moments. We attended a ceremony at the local college where the first group of nursing students received their awards. One young man, tears in his eyes, told us, "Your family's story gave me the courage to keep going. I want to help people the way she did." His words filled me with pride and a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. At the rehab center, our work continued. Sarah, now a counselor, led a support group for families dealing with addiction and loss. My son and I spoke at several meetings, sharing our story and listening to others. The community we had built was strong, bound together by shared pain and the determination to heal. I realized that, in helping others, we had helped ourselves. One evening, as we sat in the garden, my son turned to me and said, "Dad, I think I'm ready to move forward. I want to propose to Emily." Emily was a kind, gentle woman he had met at the center, and I could see how much she meant to him. I smiled, feeling a surge of hope for the future. "She's a wonderful person," I said. "Your wife would be happy for you." The proposal was simple and heartfelt, and Emily said yes. Their wedding was a small, joyful gathering in our backyard, surrounded by friends, family, and the people whose lives we had touched. As I watched my son and his new wife dance under the stars, I felt a sense of closure, a chapter ending, and a new one beginning. After the wedding, I received a letter from my daughter-in-law's mother. She wrote, "I see now that love is not about perfection, but about forgiveness and growth. Thank you for showing me that even the deepest wounds can heal." Her words echoed in my heart, a reminder that healing is a journey, not a destination. As the year drew to a close, I stood in the garden, the air cool and still, and thought about everything we had survived. The secrets, the heartbreak, the loss, but also the forgiveness, the new beginnings, and the legacy of love we had built. I realized that, while we cannot change the past, we can choose how we move forward. We can choose hope, compassion, and the courage to begin again. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt lost, betrayed, or overwhelmed by grief, know this. Your story isn't over. Every ending is a new beginning. Every heartbreak a chance to grow. You are stronger than you think, braver than you know, and more deserving of love and happiness than you can imagine. Sometimes I sit in the quiet of the garden, watching the sun set behind the trees, and I marvel at how far we've come. There was a time when I thought our family would never recover, that the SEC, Rets, the pain, and the loss would define us forever. But I've learned that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that the end of one chapter is often the beginning of another. I've discovered that family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about the people who choose to stand by you when life falls apart. It's about the friends who become your lifeline, the new love that grows from the ashes of loss, and the courage to forgive. Not just others, but yourself. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not a gift you give to those who hurt you. It's a gift you give yourself. It's the freedom to let go of anger, to release the past, and to open your heart to new possibilities. It's the strength to say, I deserve better, and the wisdom to build a life that honors your worth. If you're listening to this and you're standing at the edge of your own heartbreak, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, know this: you are not alone. Your pain is real, but so is your resilience. Your story isn't over. Every ending is a doorway to something new. Every loss a lesson in strength. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. If our story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share your own experience in the comments. Let's build a community where no one has to face heartbreak alone, and where every act of self-respect and forgiveness is celebrated. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself enough to never settle for less than you deserve.